We're ready to go in alphabetical order. Our first speaker, representing the NDP, is Jan Johnston.
It's so great to see everybody here this evening. I'd like to thank the Saugeen Shores Chamber of Commerce, the Kincardine Chamber of Commerce, and of course the University of Women for hosting this debate. I would also like to acknowledge the land of the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation this meeting is being held on. My name is Jan Johnstone. I am your NDP candidate in this election. I'm an elected school board trustee for over 15 years and the vice chair of the Blue Water District School Board. We are responsible for over $200 million budget. We're the second largest employer behind Bruce Power, and our budget is actually bigger than any municipal council in our area. My family and I have lived in Huron Bruce for over 30 years. My husband Gord works at Bruce Power. So let's now talk about nuclear energy. If you know me, you know that I support the refurbishment of the Bruce. For years, I have been part of organized tours bringing different MPPs to the plant. I brought forward NDP leader Jagmeet Singh and Andrea Horwath, and also 6 other NDP MPs. As your MPP, you can feel confident in knowing that I have been promoting our power plant and its importance to our community and the energy sector long before I was ever elected. I'm a hardworking and I get things done. Refurbishing the Bruce units keeps good jobs in our community now and in the long term. Andrea Horwath and the NDP support the refurbishment of the Bruce Power. It supports the refurbishment of Darlington, and it supports Pickering Nuclear Generating Station remaining open if it gets its license renewed. In every party, there are differences of opinion. I support the site selection process of the DGR, and the federal government will make that decision. I support Bruce Power 110%, and when the DGR gets approval, we will make sure that the DGR is the safest, most reliable storage site possible. And as long as I am your MPP, that will never change. I've always been a proud supporter of Bruce Nuclear Power Plant and its workers. And I can promise you here that if I'm elected, I will be fighting force for nuclear energy at Queen's Park. On June 7th, vote for Jan Johnstone to bring change for the better to Huron Bruce. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. Our next candidate from the Liberal Party is Don Matheson.
Before I begin, I'd also like to thank and congratulate the Saugeen Shores Chamber of Commerce, the Kincardine Chamber of Commerce, and our Canadian Federation of University Women for putting this event on tonight. It's very important that people get to listen to the candidates and see what they have to say. Good evening. My name is Don Matheson, and I'm the provincial Liberal candidate for the riding of Huron Bruce. I have made my career as a teacher with the Blue Water District School Board. In fact, I think I see a few familiar faces out there. Don't worry, there won't be a quiz at the end. I volunteer in the community whenever I can. I coach hockey, and for the past 4 years, have had the honor of serving on the Saugeen Shores Municipal Council. It was on council that I realized Huron Bruce was lacking a strong voice at Queen's Park. I believe that we do need a change here in Huron Bruce. We need an MPP that will not just see problems, but instead will look to the solutions to the challenges that we face in the community. Since becoming the provincial Liberal candidate, I have walked hundreds of kilometers and knocked on thousands of doors to meet as many people in the riding as possible. You have told me in the doorways and on the main streets that you are concerned and that you want a representative in Queen's Park who will do everything possible to help. You want to elect a representative who cares about you and your family. You want a representative that you know and trust. Tonight, the candidates will try to wow you with facts and data to try and convince you that their party and their platform is the best, that they have your best intentions in mind. You must be sure to look deeper at what they actually mean. The PCs will say the Liberals are corrupt, and have mismanaged the province for the last 15 years. I could give you 407 reasons, or 407 reasons, why their version of corrupt is not the same as mine. They will tell you that they have a plan to make things better. They have promised over $29 billion in unfunded new spending for the people of Ontario. They further promised to find $8 billion in efficiencies without making any cuts to jobs in Ontario. They say they can save 4 cents on every dollar. Now, I'm no math teacher, but their plan doesn't add up. They will be running a deficit, something they're accusing the Liberal government of doing. You can't trust their math or their promises. They just don't add up. The NDP will also try and convince you they are the best choice. This party did not believe that a fair wage was reasonable for the working people of Ontario and voted against it. What scares me most about this party is that they have made a secret deal to close the Pickering nuclear station by the end of August if they are elected. That means the loss of 4,500 primary jobs. This will eliminate almost immediately 15% of the province's energy supply. This could risk brownouts, cause higher emissions, and lead to increased electricity prices, not to mention losing 20% of the world's medical isotope supply. If they could close Pickering that fast, what's there to say that they couldn't or wouldn't close the Bruce? Most of you know me. You know that I will work hard to be your voice at Queen's Park. You realize that the best choice is someone you know and trust. That's why on June 7th, the best choice for Huron-Bruce is Don Matheson. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. And I forgot to remind everyone at the beginning, well, everybody has a cell phone, but if you do, could you please put it on to vibrate so that we're not interrupted by it? Thank you very much. Our next speaker is from the Libertarian Party. Welcome, Ron Stevens.
I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight. It's very important that you do this. I'm a little disappointed that there aren't more young people here. We have to get the young people involved in this because they have no clue what's going on in their province. I'm just going to run through some of our platform here quickly. A lot of people have no idea who the Libertarian Party is, what they stand for, or anything else. This province and the people in it have been defrauded for many decades. The electricity system that we have here is a mess, and it's a constructed mess. It started with the NDP back in the 90s when they appointed Maurice Strong, the nefarious Maurice Strong, the godfather of Bob Rae, to restructure hydro. In other words, set it up for a sell-off. And then it went to the Conservatives, who hooked up with Enron. A lot of people don't know that, but there was an Enron lobbyist attached to everyone in the Conservative government Ministry of Energy. The minister, Jim Wilson, was being flown down to Enron, had Enron lobbyists, and in the end, an Enron lobbyist ended up as the COO of the OEB, which sets our rates. And then the fraud was handed over, and the Liberals just continued it. And the amount of harm that's been done by these three parties, the general public, is not acceptable. And they're tonight going to argue with each other who screwed it up the worst. They're all guilty. Anyways, just real quick, some of the stuff. As far as electricity goes, and I have spoken to the Senior Policy Advisor to the Minister of Energy, and he agrees with me. We're going to repeal the Green Energy Act, eliminate time of use billing and discriminatory delivery charges crushing rural residents, remove all subsidized power from the grid, terminate for convenience all subsidized generation contracts, transfer off hydro book to all termination costs, including gas plant termination, and terminate all Liberal government appointees from all boards and electricity related. And this is important because if we don't do this, I mean, we have to not so much restructure hydro now. I mean, we had the best hydro system, bar none, basically in the world. And that helped give an advantage to our businesses by lower cost. It gave an advantage to our homeowners with lower cost. and that's all been taken away now. That didn't take long. Anyways, that's the electricity thing. And if you wish to look at the entire platform, all you have to do is Google in Libertarian Ontario Party, and you can look at the entire program. We'll talk about more of it as the night goes along. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ron. Our next candidate from the Progressive Conservatives, Lisa Thompson.
Thank you very much, and good evening, everyone. And I, too, would like to recognize the traditional lands of the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation that we're blessed to be on this evening for this debate hosted by both the Saugeen Shores Chamber of Commerce as well as the Kincardine Chamber of Commerce and the Canadian Federation of University Women. Thank you for being here this evening, because this is a very important election. The polls are showing that people are ready for change. And tonight, I respectfully ask for your support to send me back as the Member of Provincial Parliament for Huron-Bruce, because I have more work to do and there's more change to be done. You know, we hear from people from one end of the province to another that we need change from the incompetence and corruption that was already mentioned earlier this evening, but more importantly, we need a change for a better Ontario and a solid leadership team that can lead the way away from deficits, 11 billion to be exact, and the $300 billion deficit that we shoulder now because of 15 years of incompetence. But I want to share with you as well, over the last 2 terms, it's been an absolute honor to represent this amazing riding of Huron-Bruce. And I have worked very hard to gain respect and opportunity to make a difference for each and every one of you, because my #1 priority is and always will be this riding, because Huron-Bruce matters. And tonight you're going to hear from all of us on how we in our respective parties plan to make a difference. You're going to hear people sling some spin and some nonsensical information, but what you're going to hear from me is how we're going to facilitate change. It's time to focus on bringing Ontario back from the brinks of the debt that we've carried for so long. And you will come to know by the end of this debate that it is only the PC party that will bring accountability back to government. It is the only party, the PC Party of Ontario, who will leave more money in your pocket. We are the only party that will put an end to the hallway healthcare crisis. And we are the party that will be supporting our healthcare professionals and improving mental health access and services. The Ontario PC Party is the only party that will finally clean up this energy mess that we have found ourselves in, and we are going to scrap the price on carbon. And finally, the Ontario PC Party will bring jobs back to Ontario, because we are the ones that will facilitate a competitive environment for which jobs and our communities will thrive. The Ontario PC Party will be the party that will bring prosperity back to this amazing province that we call home. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lisa. Now, we had attempted to invite the other 2 candidates in the riding, just to let you know. And as a matter of fact, Green Party candidate Nicholas Wendler did indicate that he would be here this evening. That hasn't happened. He may show up. We'll have to wait and see. I do not believe we were successful in getting hold of Jerry Hunenmorter of the Alliance Party. So we gave it every shot, but those are the 6 candidates in the riding. Well, now that we've heard the opening speeches from everyone, now it's your turn. We move to questions from the floor. And a couple of rules. Each person asking a question needs to identify themselves and where they are from. That's so our candidates will know who they're talking to. Now, in the past, people have come up and said, "Oh, everybody knows me." Well, everybody doesn't know you. So it's up to you to identify yourself and where you are from. It's only common courtesy. Questioners will have 1 minute to ask their question. The red card rule will apply here as well. However, as I've said in the past, I've never heard of a 60-second question. We should be able to get the question in plenty of time. Your question can be directed at a specific candidate, or it can be directed at all the candidates if you so wish. And even if you don't, I have the discretion to ask all candidates to answer the question as well. Candidates, you will have 2 minutes to answer the question, and again, the red card rule will apply. So those are the rules. We're all set to go, and we've got our first questioner.
Hi. I don't know if it's on. Hi, my name is Lynn Tatey, and I'm not quite as tall as this mic. Okay. I'm from Saugeen Shores, and welcome to those who are not from Saugeen Shores. I have a question for everyone. I'd like to hear everyone answer this. Do you support a carbon tax? And if you could tell me why.
All right, and we'll do this one alphabetically as well. So that means we start with the NDP's Jan Johnstone.
Okay, thank you very much. The NDP actually does not support a carbon tax, but we do support a carbon tax cap and trade, which is very different than just a normal carbon tax. We believe that we are responsible for the environment, and we also believe that polluters should pay. Having said that, we also recognize that in collecting this money, it's a trading system, and happens with the U.S., is that the money that we receive back, that we want to ensure that part of that money goes to certain areas and communities. And one of them, so 25% of the money we receive, we want it to go back to rural areas like this area, because we feel that they could be disadvantaged. We also believe it should, of that money, that some of it should go to the northern part of Ontario, and also for people who are economically challenged. And finally, that for industries that would be internationally traded, would act as some kind of barrier. So we want to ensure that we're supporting our industries as we shift to a greener climate and to a less polluting, because we're all responsible for the environment. Thank you.
Kate?
Could I have a point of clarification?
Well,
or not?
because her
No?
time's going to
No
be
time.
up anyway,
Okay.
okay? But you can come back to that if there are no other questioners, okay? But next to answer that question is Don Matheson.
Thank you for the question, Lynn. It was a good one. I do support the carbon tax. Our policy with the Liberal team is the carbon pricing. We want to make sure that we, as Jan said, we are stewards of our environment. We have to be stewards of our environment. We have to make sure that we look after it. But with our policy, when we have excess, we sell it off to other jurisdictions, places like Quebec or California. In the last quarter, we sold back $471 million worth of credits, which comes right back into the government for infrastructure use that goes into projects that we have to put out there. So yes, I do support it.
Thank you very much, Don. And now Ron Stevens from the Libertarian Party.
The Libertarian Party absolutely does not support a carbon tax or a cap and trade tax. If you understand the history of it, it's a fraud. And the Libertarians' platform from the beginning to the end is to get out of your pockets. Removing money from your pocket and putting it in this pocket and taking over that pocket, waste of time, waste of money, because we don't have a carbon problem here. Okay, so no to the carbon tax. Simple.
Okay, thank you, Ron. And now Lisa Thompson, Progressive Conservative.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate the question, Lynn. And I agree with Ron. It's important that everybody in the room, yes, I do. It's important that everybody in the room this evening recognizes and knows that the fact is Ontario produces less than 1/2 of a percentage point, less than 1/2 of a percentage point of emissions at the global level. But When governments are cash-strapped, what do? They employ schemes, if you will. The Liberal government of Ontario employed a cap-and-trade scheme that is seeing the bulk of our hard-earned tax dollars go down to California. We do not support the Liberal cap-and-trade scheme, nor do we support a tax on carbon. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Our next speaker.
Thank you. My name is Ton Frost, Saugeen Shores resident. Question is to all the candidates. We're now looking at a $300+ billion debt. How are your parties specifically going to reduce this debt for our children and our grandchildren? Thank you.
Thank you, John. And we'll start with Don Matheson, this time from the Liberal Party.
Thank you, Ton. That's a great question. It's like buying a house. You can't pay it all off at once. You have to pay it out over a little bit of time. The Liberal Party has a plan, and we're responsible for the people. We have to look after the people first. If we don't look after them, we're going to be in worse problems. So our problem is, how do we do that? We came up with a way, it's called Care Before Cuts. We're going to look after the people to make sure that all our social needs are taken care of first. Once we do that, then we will take back and balance our budget again and bring the deficit down. It comes back to one of two things. You can pay for it now or you can pay for it later. If we don't look after the people, we're just going to pay more in the end. Hope that answers the question.
Thank you, Don. Next is Ron Stevens.
Yeah, the debt, it should not exist. But again, if you follow back to the NDP, through the Conservatives, to the Liberals, they are all equally involved in the rise in the debt. They're all responsible for it. And the only problem with government is it's not accountable to you people. You're the ones that pick up the credit card debt. We have to, first of all, start to streamline government. The size of the bureaucracy in this province is outrageous, and it grows every day. Then we got to pay it down, okay? And the only way we can pay it down really is to bring business back to Ontario, okay? This province has been gutted out. You know, our manufacturing sector is basically non-existent. Try to find something built, made in this province or this country anymore. It's next to impossible. The only way you're going to pay the debt down is to grow the businesses. The only way you're going to grow the businesses is to make it financially feasible for them. And one of the problems that drove so many businesses out of this province was the doubling of our hydro and the carbon taxes and the cap and trade and everything else, right? You're not going to pay the debt down following the platforms of these other three parties. I'm sorry. That's just the way it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Lisa Thompson.
Thanks for your question, Ton. And in short, we're going to realize efficiencies, 4 cents on every dollar. And let me tell you how the PC Party of Ontario is going to move forward with that initiative. We are going to follow the independent officers of the legislature. We're not going to push them aside like the Liberal government has done. We're going to listen to the Auditor General. She has done a report after a study was completed last year that found, in reviewing just 14 programs out of the hundreds and hundreds we have in this province, reviewing 14 programs resulted in a proposed savings of $1 billion. And let me share some of those savings that she noted. We have government-owned property, that is a wasteland. It's sitting idle. And to the tune, I just want to make sure I have my numbers right, that includes government sitting on vacant buildings to the tune of $19 million and not enforcing office space standards, which is a waste of another $174 million. And then we could start talking about the money that we spend paying neighboring American jurisdictions to take surplus energy off our hands. The list just goes on and on. So ladies and gentlemen, we're going to work with our independent officers of the legislature. We're going to work with our experts. And we truly believe we can find efficiencies without laying anyone off, no matter what anyone says tonight. We are committed that everybody will keep their jobs. We're going to be focusing in on the waste, and that is how we are going to chip away at the debt, because as a very wise person once told me, if you take care of your pennies, the dollars will take care of themselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Jan Johnson is next from the NDP.
So thank you very much for your question. So I'm very, very proud of Andrea Horwath and the NDP, because we are one of only two parties that have actually presented a fully costed platform and showed the money. In fact, what's really interesting is that Dr. Moffat from the University of Western, the Ivy Business School, looked at the three main parties, the Conservatives, Liberals, and the NDP, and he's been costing for example, the Conservative platform, because they haven't come out with actually a costed platform, and said out of all three parties, the NDP shows the least amount of deficit, and that surprisingly, the largest deficit will be incurred by the Conservatives. Having said that, NDP, we're going to base our economics on four principles. One is we're going to make investments that make life better for everyone. We will protect middle-class families from tax hikes and fee increases. We're going to ensure that the wealthiest people and the most profitable corporations pay their fair share for the services that are accessible for others. So we're going to increase a little bit of corporate taxes for the richest and also for the wealthiest. And we're going to make sure investments in services is financially sustainable, so we can stop decade-long practices of cuts and funding freezes. I think that the other thing we're going to be planning to do is we're going to close loopholes that allow big corporations to qualify for small business exemptions. And there's more, but thank you very much.
Thank you, Jan. Our next questioner.
Yeah, hi. My name is Paul Crowley, and I'm from Tiverton, Ontario. I'm not particularly politically savvy. I guess you could call me kind of Joe Citizen. What I read in the paper, I understand some of it. One thing I do understand is everybody's got a platform. Platforms. I keep hearing about platforms. And the one thing that I have also recognized is that every time there's a new party that comes into power, there's promises made, but of course the platform collapses because the previous party screwed things up, and of course now we can't keep our promises. So my question is this: in 2 minutes, can you educate a simple guy like me as to what specifically your platforms are and whether or not you're going to keep each and every promise that you make? Thank you.
Okay. Not a small request. 2 minutes. Okay, Ron, you're starting.
I am.
Yes,
Wonderful.
you are.
Thank you for the question. You're absolutely correct in your assessment that this goes on and on and on at all levels. Parties make promises and promises and promises, and once they're elected, then you go, why didn't you do what you said you were going to do? And you've all heard it before. Well, they did something we didn't know about. Now they've screwed it up, so we can't keep our promises. That's politics. You wouldn't get away with that in real life. You make a promise, you're expected to keep the promise. The Libertarian Party has a promise, and we intend to keep it, and that is to get as much government out of your life as absolutely possible. This is your province. It doesn't belong to a bunch of politicians, okay? And once they get all these programs going, they just keep building that bureaucracy up, and it keeps costing you more money. Nobody can deny it. I mean, it's all over the papers. The middle class in this province is disappearing, and it's because of this debt load in that. And the debt load has been from one party to the other. I mean, she's talking about saving $1 billion here and $19 million there. The debt is over $310 billion. I mean, whittling along 4 cents on a dollar is going nowhere quick. All right. So our platform, everything that's in our platform, we have one concern in our platform, and I was talking to the leader of the party, and that's the OEB. The OEB sets your power rates, and they are outside of the government. Nobody in the government can tell the OEB what to do. That has to be fixed. Thank you.
Ontario Energy Board.
Okay, we're good?
We're done.
All right, Lisa Thompson.
Okay, so our plan for a better Ontario is based on 5 pillars. Bringing back good jobs to this province, cleaning up the energy file, bringing accountability back to the Government of Ontario. A little sidebar there, another example of accountability is the fact that $422 million was paid out in the Liberal Jobs and Prosperity Fund. That fund was money that the Liberal government invited people to apply for. There was no accountability, no measurable metrics that identified the benefits, net benefit for the province. And we're going to stop that type of slush fund, if you will, for insiders and friends. We also are going to actually leave more money in your pocket. And a couple of instances that I will share with you is that we're going to reduce the corporate tax rate by 1%. We are going to remove provincial income tax off of anyone earning minimum wage or anyone like a senior earning $19,000 or less, or if you're a senior couple, that's approximately $32,000 or less. And we're going to reduce that middle bracket of income in Ontario, that middle tax, by 20%. So that tax bracket is between $40,000 and $80,000. And so that's how we're going to leave more money in your pocket. In terms of cleaning up the hydro mess, we're going to stop signing contracts we don't need. That continued right up to the last day of the 41st Parliament. That's just a horrible track record. And we are going to be more mindful of a proper energy mix based on reliable, low cost, and base load energy like nuclear. And last but not least, very importantly, we're going to address the hallway healthcare crisis and the total lack of attention that has been spent on mental health.
Time's up, Lisa. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jan Johnstone.
Paul, as Joe citizen, I believe your question was around how we're making promises and how we are going to ensure that we're going to keep them. And I believe that's what I heard you say.
Okay.
Okay. So thank you. And what is your platform? So I think that our platform is really, overall is about affordability for everyday families, and it's focused on people. It's focused on the many and not the few, and that's exactly it. So we want to provide, because we live in a modern economy and we need to be moving forward. So things like we're going to ensure there's universal dental care and there's universal pharmacare, that children who need child care starting, basically infant care all the way up for those who can't afford it. And low income, that they would not have to pay, but those other people, everybody else, we'd pay $12 a day. I'm talking about a modern economy, looking at the things that we need as work becomes more precarious and part-time for many people, that this way, when, that people who are interested in opening businesses and in Ontario would be attracted to it because we have a healthy workforce, and that we're providing those benefits. I also believe that, as I mentioned, we're the only party that actually has a fully costed program. And I think that I would be very concerned if if a party was making a presentation that they're asserting that they're going to do better, but they're not willing to be transparent and actually show you their platform and fully costed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jen. And our final speaker on this question is Don Matheson.
Thank you, Paul. That was a good question. Before I get into it, though, we got to understand what it means to promise. Okay? I can't promise you anything, and I won't promise you anything because it's important to know all the facts beforehand. It'd be like saying, I'm going to promise to keep the jail open and then not keep it open. It's like saying, we have a fully costed budget, but every other day, discrepancies keep coming up in the numbers. So the Liberal policy platform is called Care Before Cuts. Our policy is to continue with the social improvements that we've started. We laid out our budget, we know what we need to do, and we're going to keep doing it. Now, some people may not agree with looking after everybody in the province, but the government's job is to look after the people, all the people. Whether you're rich or poor, wherever you live, you have to look after everybody. So we're going to continue with our social programs, and then once we get that taken care of, we will bring down that deficit. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for your question, Paul. Our next speaker.
Thank you. My name's John Mann. I live in Saugeen Shores. My question follows up on Paul's. I believe that the political parties destroy democracy. I think political parties should be abolished. Whoever wins on June 7th, the other parties, particularly NDP or whoever doesn't win, the other parties will fight them every which way they can. I want, as a citizen, I want everybody to get together and give us good jobs, good education, and good employment, and the things that everybody wants, in the best interest of everybody. Because you can't work with everybody when you're a party. Because if you do, you'll be successful, and then you can't get your power next time.
John, what's your question? Your time is up.
My question is, how are you going to fix that? And the embarrassing way you heckle one another at Parliament, and there should be one term,
all right.
4 years.
That's it.
No re-election.
That's your question.
Thank you.
Lisa Thompson, you're first.
Certainly. John, I appreciate your question very much, and I work really hard at Queen's Park to have a respecting relationship with everyone. And I think I can be straightforward enough to tell you, in the years that I've been at Queen's Park, I've achieved that. I've been chosen by all parties to represent Ontario on the Commonwealth Women Parliamentarians Canada Region Steering Committee, and that is a huge honor on behalf of all women of Ontario and all parties, quite frankly. And I have been asked to step up into the vice chair role as well for all of Canada. I have also worked with parties to bring forward the need to recognize that this province needs to do more for Lyme disease. And just at the end of the 41st Parliament, I'm very happy to share with you that the government brought forward a plan to start better addressing Lyme disease and ticks. And in fact, they adopted a motion that I brought forward last fall to put ticks on the map and using better technology that I uncovered. Another initiative that I have done is a Great Lakes Awareness Day. I work with legislators on both sides of the parallel, if you will, and I was really happy to hear that American legislators are actually embracing my legislation around Great Lakes Awareness Day. Everything that I do first and foremost reflecting the priorities of our riding, and I take it forward and make sure that I can seek support from all three parties. And then from there, we can really make a difference. What you see in question period, yes, that's theater, but unfortunately what people don't see is the good work that gets done off camera. And my last example would be, I had unanimous consent to move forward to make it mandatory to teach about agri-food careers in grade 9 and 10 career and guidance curriculum, because we have amazing jobs not only here in Bruce but across the province. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Jan Johnstone.
Yes. I guess my background as a school trustee for 15 years is, of course, school boards are nonpartisan, and people come to a board table from different areas of Grey Bruce and have various opinions. And one of the things is, as a school board, is to work across difference, to come to some kind of consensus after debate. And so I've had lots of experience, as you know, you said, very concerned about kind of the heckling and things that happen at Queen's Park, and I would agree. But I've had my experience, my political experience of 15 years has been very much working across difference. And having a focus in what we wanted to do in the best interest of students, representing parents and the communities we represent. I also wanted to say that the NDP in their platform has also going to be bring forward a MPP code of conduct. And I think that it's going to be very helpful in how MPPs not only treat one another in Parliament, and I think that's a very, very important thing. And I look forward to bringing that forward when I get elected.
Thank you, Jan. Don Matheson.
Thanks, John. That's a very interesting question. We've talked about this several times. Change starts with one person, and I can work with just about everybody. As a teacher, I teach my kids that inclusion is important. How do you work with people when you have a problem? You don't just put them away. You don't not listen to them. You have to learn to work with people. I feel that this starts with the local level. It starts with working in your riding. You have to work with all the people, whether they voted for you or not. And we all know that in some instances, if it's known that you were in an area that didn't support the local MPP, you don't get the same treatment. I want to ensure that everybody knows that I will look after everybody. As a member of council, I look after all the members of my constituency. As a member of provincial parliament, I'll continue to work with all my members of the constituency. Once I get to Queen's Park, it starts with one step, as I said. We will work to ensure that I can work with everybody, and hopefully that will help move the change along.
Thank you, Don. And Ron Stevens.
Thank you, John, for that question. It's very important. I was actually going to run as an independent. I ran as an independent in 2007 because I do not believe in the party system. The party system, if you think about it logically, right-left, it divides the population. That's what it does. I was actually did a radio interview back in 2007, and my attitude is dump the party system. I'm with the Libertarian Party because this is really, if you look at the candidates in the Libertarian Party, they are basically independent candidates who have come together, who understand the fallacy of this party system. The real way to make democracy work is for each, you keep the same electoral districts, but you, the people, pick your member. That's your job. Okay, and each area has its own assets and its own. Each one has things that the other one doesn't. Instead of sitting across, bitching and complaining at each other all the time in the theater there, okay, the job is to make this province work. Use the assets from this area and that area and bring them together. And you're never going to do that with the party system, okay? Because it's always challenging each other, and it's always dividing the people, and it doesn't work. But for the time being, I'm running with the Libertarian Party. Hopefully, we have 117 candidates running this year. Hopefully, someday we can get this together so that we can make a proper democracy for the people of Ontario. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, John. Our next questioner.
Hi, I'm Cassie Wallace. I'm from Saugeen Shores. The infrastructure in rural Ontario is old, crumbling, and/or lacking. For example, here in Saugeen Shores, our pool is at the end of its life. We have a shortage of affordable housing, and we're in desperate need of long-term care beds. I would like to know what your parties are going to do to address these ongoing problems.
All right, thank you very much. And I believe Jan is our speaker this time first.
So about a week ago, I accompanied the people who were coming, basically walking kind of in protest here to the municipality, and they were wearing orange. It was my color. And, they had the orange puffs, and I felt like I fit right in. And it was about funding, and I was listening to the different municipal councillors, of course, talking about that they've been trying to get funding for this pool, and they were willing to do some match funding. And I actually wrote one of the councillors who was here this evening, and I was really proud of the NDP because back in 2008, the Liberals had basically cut this kind of funding, and I let him know that we will restore funding to the Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund, allowing local governments to make long-term plans. And we will work with lower-tier municipalities to ensure that they can get the funding for important local priorities. We will restore funding and increasing it to $550 million. So I'd like to actually thank the Orange Puff people for bringing that to my attention. The NDP is, of course, is very much about making change for the better for people of Ontario. And we've noticed that, of course, any kind of social housing has really gone downhill and has not been restored. And I'm proud to say that the NDP is going to start building social housing and different kinds of housing for different people's needs. And I believe there's some other things, but thank you very much. My time's up.
Thank you. Don Matheson.
Thank you for that question, Cassie. I, too, understand the need for infrastructure upgrading. I could go through my binder and tell you all the great things that the Liberals have done. Don't shake your head. It has happened. We've thrown $230 billion into public infrastructure over 14 years, $79 billion at the largest public transit. But that's not what matters. What you want to know is that our platform is putting money into the area. Infrastructure and social housing, social reform, social care. Care before cuts. I know that we have to get back into helping out the communities, and that's what we plan to do. It takes time. Rome wasn't built in a day, and that really does apply to politics. And working with your local municipal councillors, and I know the issue that you're talking about, it does take time. We are working to bring that pool to fruition, but it takes time. You have to look at all the parts to it, and I know people are going to shake their head, like two people down to your left. He's going to say that doesn't work that way, but it does. You have to make sure we have all the ins and outs done, but you have to make sure that the government, the Liberal government, is going to continue to fund the projects. Everything that's happened in this area in the last 15 years has happened because of Liberals. All the roads, all the bridges that are brought up. Southampton Hospital was just finished with a renovation. That's Liberal funding. We know what needs to be done. We're going to continue to improve it. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. Ron Stevens.
Thank you for the question. I'm sitting here listening to these parties who we fund this, we fund that, we fund this, and it sounds ridiculous because it sounds like total socialism to me. They're going to look after you from the cradle to the grave.
Ron, can we get you to speak closer?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry about that. The reason the infrastructure is falling apart in rural Ontario is simply that the people are aging in rural Ontario. And if you go to the smaller communities, you'll see their services are being cut, the banks are being closed, the gas stations are being closed, and yada, 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 forcing those people to move into the next biggest community. Where they'd like all of you people is in the city. Okay, that's the plan. And unfortunately, in order to get you to move, once the infrastructure starts to crumble around you and you need the services, you will move. And that is exactly why your infrastructure is falling apart in rural Ontario. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Lisa Thompson.
Thank you very much. And that was a good question. It's a priority that we all have to work together on. Affordable housing is absolutely an issue in this riding, not only for young families, single parents, our seniors as well. And we need to do better, and we will be working with our local experts to determine our best path forward. And in addition to that, there was a three-part question, so I want to segue over to another thing we're working with experts on, and that is alleviating hallway health care. We have a crisis in health care right now, and in part, it's because our seniors don't have long-term care beds to go to. So where do they go? They go to our local hospitals. And so the PC Party of Ontario is committed to increasing long-term care beds by 15,000 over the first 5 years, and we'll be adding another 15,000 for a total of 30,000 beds in the time period of 10 years. But I do want to talk about the crumbling infrastructure. Ladies and gentlemen, over the last 6.5 years, it's actually been embarrassing. I'm being totally honest here. It's been embarrassing for me to be at ROMA, Rural Ontario Municipal Association Conference, because I see municipalities from Huron-Bruce begging for 15 minutes of a minister's time with their cap in their hand, explaining why they need funds for their bridges, for their roads, for their rec centers. And that is because, as Jan pointed out, the Liberal government of the day has completely eroded the Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund. They've taken $70 million away from rural and northern municipalities. We're going to restore that, but take it a step further. We're going to ask municipalities to throw their hat out of the way. They know best. So with their allotment of funding, it's up to the municipalities to determine how they can best invest that money. They don't have to apply for that funding any longer, and that's a good thing for our local communities.
Thank you, Lisa. Just under the wire there. Our next questioner.
I'm Suzanne McBride Edwards. I'm from Clinton. I want to know if you will return railroads and buses back to rural Ontario so people can get around.
All right, thank you for that question. Don Matheson, you're going to start it off.
Thank you, Susan. That's a good question. The problem is, with our railroads, we sold off with the land. We can't put in a railroad where it used to be because most municipalities have it as bike trails, as walking trails. We'd have to build a new system. Now that you've mentioned that, we have a system that's coming up, and we're going to start it. It's got to start somewhere. It's going to go from Kitchener to London to Toronto. Nope. I know we do. Let me get there. We're going to start with that system to start to get people around. Once we have to do to rural Ontario, busing costs a lot of money. The problem is how are we going to pay for it? So yes, we do have to look into that. And when you elect me to Queen's Park, that'll be one of my first priorities, to look at how we do get people around. I know that we have to get people, our cancer victims, to London, to Kitchener. It costs a lot. We rely on people to do that out of the goodness of their heart. It takes time, and I will look into that for you.
Okay, thank you. Ron Stevens is next.
Yeah, they should have never took the railroads out. That was a huge mistake. That beats up our infrastructure, highways and the bridges really bad with all the truck traffic. But government is what it is, and it's doing what it wants to do. As far as transportation is concerned, this question came up actually 7 years ago when I ran, or 11 years ago when I ran, 11 years ago now. There's this infrastructure being, a pile of money being poured into light rail transit. One of the reasons they're pouring it into light rail transit is to get you out of your vehicle. That is one of the things that's not sustainable. It's a bit of a ruse on you guys. You're paying for it. They want you out of your vehicles. They want you to go where the transit goes and nowhere else. As far as your question about buses out of Clinton, I understand that. It's probably not fiscally workable. You know, everybody wants something from the government, so to speak. I don't see why the people of Clinton or any other area can't get together. This idea of depending on government all the time for every damn thing makes me nuts. Get your people together in Clinton, okay? Buy a bus, okay? Pay a driver, and he'll take you where you want to go. That's how independent people operate. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Lisa Thompson.
I do really appreciate your question. I take it seriously because we have a situation whereby, in terms of affordable housing, we have had people move out to our riding into communities. They're coming from urban centers, and they're used to having a bus system or a subway system or a fast track. And unfortunately, they get out and they perhaps realize a lower cost of living, but they're stranded because, and you're shaking your hand, not always a lower cost of living, but they don't have...
Susan, you asked the question, let them answer.
So they come out to the areas, but they are landlocked now because they are used to an urban transit system, but unfortunately in rural Ontario we don't have it. And so it's time that a provincial government starts applying a rural lens to every policy that they make. And we need to have our social agencies come together and be at the table when we look at policies in terms of helping our people settle into communities. First and foremost, if there was a rural lens placed on the idea of moving people out to small town Ontario, they would realize first and foremost, hey, we don't have a transit system in Clinton. We don't have one in Kincardine. How are people going to get to the grocery store to get good food as opposed to a convenience store for the quick food? I've met with constituents that come to meet with me and express those exact concerns. So we as a government need to do better. We need to place a rural lens on all social policy so that we can help people with their priorities. If they want to come and live in an area, we need to make sure they know the surroundings they're moving into, but we do need to free up more dollars for municipalities to address infrastructure like public transit, like a gas tax. The Liberals have voted against the PCs 6 years in a row when we've asked them to share the gas tax with 444 municipalities.
Thank you, Lisa. Jan Johnstone.
I was, many years ago, I was involved in mental health in Grey Bruce and worked across in Huron in terms of people, having to get across for appointments and for mental health issues. I am going to say that since the cows come home, that in rural Ontario and part of Huron Bruce, that we've had transportation issues of people getting around, and so I wouldn't say that in our platform there was anything that actually addresses that. I'll be honest, but I have been looking at and been reading about some interesting solutions. And because I've always realized it's been a problem. And one of them, and I'm not sure exactly what municipality, because it is a municipal focus, is they started up like an Uber system. And that's exactly it. And it's actually working really well. And the municipality subsidizes it, so it's affordable for their municipal people, and it's actually been quite good. And so that was one idea, and I actually really liked it because I thought that it would work better in Huron Bruce. Okay. Oh, you're welcome.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thanks, Susan. All right. Our next speaker is...
Great. Is that right? Okay, good. I'm John Willits. I'm in Southampton. Politics in Canada, and particularly Ontario, is very complicated. You can like a leader or dislike a leader. You can clearly understand a party's platform, and then when you get into office, things happen. And the reality is that across whatever party that's been in over the last decades, we're, $26,000 per man, woman, and child in debt. So my house of 5, somehow I owe $130,000 for the party in power to either promise financial prosperity that never comes, like Nortel or something like that, or services that we certainly cannot afford. Now, the 4 of you, you cannot control your leader or your party, but I do not know enough about the values and principles that the 4 of you have in terms of making sure that we have a financially responsible government.
Is that your question,
That's
John?
my question.
Your time's
Yeah.
up. Ron, you started off.
Good question, and thanks a lot. I still see too many people asking the government to do everything but wipe their butt. You got to grow up, folks, or your debt's just going to keep on rising. As far as the debt goes here, I think we have to change our mindset a little bit. Most of the people in this room tonight are middle-aged and older. This is not about you. and it's not about me, and it's not about our party. What this is really about, and you got to get your mind right, this is about your children and your grandchildren and those who are not born yet. Because we're going to pass, and that debt that you mentioned on your family is going to rise if we don't do something. And that's going to bastardize the future of your children, grandchildren, those not yet born. And we have a responsibility to those people. That's what our responsibility is. These politicians will tell you, well, you can ask any question you want. Do we get free bubble gum? Our government will give you free bubble gum. Because you asked for it. But you ain't getting it, okay? You trust these people, might as well go get in the dive board and dive on in the debt pool, okay? But we do have to grow up here. We got a huge problem, but it's being passed on to the young people. And it's our responsibility to get responsible and to stand up and get this fixed, because they ain't going to fix it. You're going to fix it, okay? If you're waiting for the government to fix the problem, you're going to be waiting a long time. Everyone has to participate. And they got to hold everybody's feet to the fire. Now, our government has instant recall.
Ron, time is now. Thank you. Lisa, you're next.
Thanks for your question. It's a very important one, and it gives you an insight into who we are. And I am a progressive conservative, and I say that very proudly because I feel you have to have your fiscal house in order. And when it's in order and everything is balanced, then you can work and pay forward social programs to take care of everyone. And just a little bit about me, since you asked. Prior to going to Queen's Park, I was general manager of the Ontario Dairy Goat Cooperative. I know the pressures of meeting payroll. I had a team of employees, and I worked for 120 farm families across this province. And we grew this business together. It started in my home, and the first annual balance sheet that I shared with my members, we had about $3 million. Going to Queen's Park that summer, we had reached $18 million. I had bought our own fleet of trucks because we were renting trucks and paying other trucking companies to haul the milk for us. And that was something that we could save on because they had their margins and their markups. And we could save those margins and reinvest it into the business. And so I was finding efficiencies back then as general manager of the Dairy Goat Cooperative. And we grew, and you know what? That's what I took to Queen's Park. We have to find efficiencies so that we can build a nest egg and we can continue to grow. We bought 2 other cooperatives. We started processing cheese and fluid milk, and we prospered, and the families then could grow their businesses as a result. And that is what I take to Queen's Park, and those are the principles that I stand on every day I represent Huron-Bruce.
Thank you, Lisa. Jan Johnstone.
Yes. As a school board trustee and as the vice chair of the board, we're responsible, as you heard, for over $200 million. But the other thing is, for over 15 years, we have to, it's by law, balance our budget. So when you're asking about, being, you could say fiscally responsible, I also think that it is the public's money, and that we always should be responsible and not kind of throw it away, that the promises we make, we should spend the money in those areas that we made the promises to the public and in a responsible way. So I come from where, we have to balance the budget. But I think the other thing is that we're the only one of 2 parties who actually provided a costed, platform that was fully costed, that actually showed exactly all the numbers. We were quite transparent, and as Mike Moffat from Ivy Business School said, that we actually showed the least deficit of the 3 major parties. But the other thing is, and this is by Stats Canada, is that when they looked at governments across Canada, and whether NDP Liberal or Conservative, that in actual fact it showed that NDP governments have been the most financially responsible. This is Stats Canada, and that we've had the most balanced budgets when we are in government, and also showed the least amount of deficit. So if you want a party and an elected member that actually is fiscally responsible, knows how to balance a budget, then I hope you vote for me.
Thank you, Jen. Don Matheson.
Thank you, John. That was a good question. Now, when I first started teaching 25 years ago, I remember when the NDP party came in and balanced their budget. And I don't know how many people remember Ray days and having to work for free to balance that budget, but I don't want the people to have to go through that again. We can fix the deficit in a few years, but what it would take would be massive tax hikes. People don't want that. People can't afford that. The Liberal government realizes that. That's why we're trying to help people. Care before cuts. My policy is rural is relevant. I want to make sure that Huron and Bruce is looked after. But you have to understand that we just came through a recession that affected the world, and Ontario came through it better than almost 90% of the world. In the last few years, we've had over 820,000 new jobs. We put over 400,000 jobs under Premier Wynne. Our unemployment rate has dropped to less than 5.5%, the lowest it's been for over 34 months. It takes time. We can't fix it all at once. We know how to fix it. You know how to fix it. But people can't afford to do that all at once. It would be massive. Businesses will go out of work. There would be no jobs. We have to do it on a graduated process that the Liberals have already put forward. Our budget lays out everything. We've said what we're going to do and how long it's going to take to fix it. Hope that helps. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. And our next guest.
Thanks, Don. My name is Bill Palmer. I'm a resident of Saugeen Shores. Been here for over 40 years now. I'm sure all of the candidates realize that a lot of people in Saugeen Shores are pretty energy literate. It's a big part of our lives. And the energy system in Ontario is a very important part. I was going to ask a question about nuclear replacement for Pickering, but everybody sort of said one answer, and then somebody else said, well, other people don't say that, so I'm not sure I'll get an answer, so I'm going to ignore that question. So I'm going to step to my second question, and that one of the options that's considered is installation of wind turbines, and we've seen that. You probably know that in Saugeen Shores and in our neighboring municipalities, there are a number of people who have left their homes because of they can't live there anymore. They meet me, they say, Bill, I can't live there anymore. Can't you do something? I guess I'm really interested to know from each party, and
time's up, Bill, so if we could have
what is your position, please, on addressing the concerns identified by people impacted by wind turbines that haven't been addressed?
Thank you very much, Bill. Okay, we're going to start with Lisa on that one.
My first concern on this issue is that the Environmental Bill of Rights and the website that the people in Ontario have to issue their complaints is broken. Time and time again, people across this province and right here in Huron-Bruce reach out to the Ministry of Environment with their complaints and their concerns, and they have lived with it for years. They're sending the direction of the wind, the temperature of the day. They've lived with it for so long, they know exactly what the ministry is looking for. And unfortunately, it goes in a black hole. So one of the first things that we will do when we form government within the Ministry of Environment, we are going to address the broken Environmental Bill of Rights. Secondly, we are going to free up the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change personnel to allow them to do the job that they've been doing. They've been handcuffed, they've been muzzled, they've gone out to farms and to residences of people affected by turbines, and they have not been able to put forward their reports in a factual way to allow proper remediation. That is a travesty in today's society, and nobody owns it more than this Liberal government. Thirdly, I will ensure that proper testing by experts will be conducted at the houses in question, so that together with the experts and the people who have had remedies in the past can be at the table, and together we'll find a way forward to deal with the people suffering from the turbines. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Jan Johnson.
I was, as a New Democrat, I was very proud of one of our members in caucus in the last session who brought in water into the legislature. It showed very dirty water that was coming, and it was from the Essex area from drilling. And he was actually thrown out of the legislature because the government was denying that there was a problem from the drilling and affecting their well waters in that area. So I was his name is Terrace, and I think that we should all, show that the idea about that water is the most important resource, and that everybody should have access and maintain clean drinking water. And so one of the things is the NDP is going to be putting forward is developing a water strategy, and that's very important, so that it's an assurance that, in fact, water will always be drinkable and portable. Having said that, the other thing is to do with the wind turbines. I have friends who have been affected by wind turbines, is that it has to do with compliance. So, for example, if there is a noise issue and it actually has shown that, it's a violation, that the turbine should be taken out of shut down, essentially, until that problem is fixed. And that's a compliance issue, but it's also a enforcing of regulation. So that is another thing. I also believe that the NDP very much, and it has to do with municipalities, and the NDP would like to get rid of basically the Ontario Municipal Board, and so that municipalities can make local decisions that affect us. And so they could have made decisions around turbines being further away from people's homes. Thank you very much. And that will be brought in.
Thank you, Jan. Don Matheson.
Thank you for the question, Bill. I believe in the science. Science has yet to prove that people are affected by wind turbines. I know individual people have different, science has not proved that, but I do believe in, thank you. I do believe that people have individual electrical systems in them, and our body is an electrical system, that are affected by it. I get out of a car, I get a shock from it. Not everybody does that. But we have a windmill in Saugeen Shores that has an issue. It's a compliance issue, and the difference between 40 and 45 decibels is like me talking like this. But we also have an MPP who, for the last 2 terms, has not fixed that problem.
Are you kidding me?
It's still functioning.
Give me a break.
Let Don have his 2 minutes.
Bill, it comes down to energy. Nuclear energy creates 60% of the power that we have in this province. Renewable energy constitutes 20% of that. We can't build a new nuclear facility to make up for what people don't want. And the biggest issue of windmills is that it's on individual people's property. The people have the right to decide, as long as it's within compliance, if they want it on their property. If you look at Asheville, Colborne, and Wawanosh Township, at first they weren't for it. They had problems. Then they discovered that the lines were improperly installed. They put them above ground. As soon as they fixed that problem and installed the lines underground, Asheville, Colborne, and Wawanosh is rife with turbines. It's actually on their board as part of their symbol of Asheville, Colborne, and Wawanosh. We need renewable energy. Problem is, we're a flat country, or a flat province. We don't have the rivers that places like Quebec do. We can't put out the hydroelectric power, so we have to find better renewable sources. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. And Ron, you're last.
PCs, I ran in 2007. John Tory of the PCs said in the platform book, and I wish all people would read all platform books, that the Conservatives would put more wind into Ontario than the Liberals. It's not funny. It was in the platform book. Now, as far as wind energy is concerned, it's a complete and total fraud. I've worked with numerous families on this over the years. It's a constructed fraud. The minister, or the senior policy advisor for the Minister of Energy, agrees that it's a fraud. We went through this. A lot of engineering reports, spoke to a lot of engineers, and what I came up with was we need one more small nuke, redo some transmission lines, put the scrubbers on the coal plants, done. $10 billion. And the senior policy advisor agreed with it 100%. I said, okay, if that's the answer, then what the hell's going on over here? He said, this is called sound engineering. That's called politics, okay? This whole renewable energy thing is what drove our hydro bills up, okay? And the Libertarian Party will cut anything that's subsidized. All of these windmills need to be come down. They were put way too close. The engineering reports from overseas say minimum 1,000 meters. Okay? The government sidestepped that through what the hell was that doofus's name from the windmill companies? Sidestepped that whole thing and dropped them in 350, 450, 500 and drove people completely out of their homes. And down in West Wabanach, or not West Wabanach, down Goderich Way, if you knew how many people have been driven out of their homes down there, regardless if the municipalities have a windmill on their thing or not.
Thank you. Okay. Who's next?
Thank you, John. And I don't have a windmill question. It's not a windmill question. I do, however, Mike Myatt, Town of Saugeen Shores. Sorry, John. Go on. The province of Ontario has a staggering $5 billion deficit in recreation infrastructure. And it's getting worse. I'm speaking of arenas, community centers, pools. Our pool alone here in the town of Saugeen Shores is over 40 years old. And it was back in 2008 was the last time there was a meaningful recreation infrastructure fund. And I'm speaking about the Owen Sound Regional Rec Center. $23 million was awarded to the Y. And I dare say maybe today, I'm not sure, would be constructed without that help. According to a recent report released by the Ministry for Health Promotions, and I quote, "It has been proven that active lifestyles lead to healthy bodies, which leads to lower health costs. Up-to-date recreation facilities contribute to active lifestyles." And I know two of the candidates touched on the question I'm about to ask, and Jan, I appreciate your answer. And Ron, you touched on it briefly as well. Lisa and Dawn, I'd like to be more specific with this question. When will the province of Ontario start focusing more attention on rural Ontario via recreation infrastructure funding and less focus on big cities across the province of Ontario? And what is your party's position on a dedicated recreation infrastructure fund that can help municipalities replace, renew aging arenas, community centers?
Now, did you address that to Lisa and Dawn, correct?
Lisa and Dawn.
Okay. So, Lisa, you're first.
Thanks very much. And again, it comes back to respecting rural municipalities. And we know full well that the Liberal government has eroded the $70 million of the UMP funding that would help municipalities with their projects. And a sidebar to that is we also know municipalities spend a lot of money on consultants developing application forms and programs so that they can go with their cap in their hand and hope they win the lottery and get some money for valued community projects. We're going to get rid of that. A Doug Ford PC government is going to have one window access for all projects in terms of moving forward to get approvals. You're not going to have to go here, there, and try to hire consultants that know somebody in different ministries. It's going to be a one-window access. And over and above that, we're going to save you some time. We're going to mandate that every approval needed for a project has to be turned over within 365 days, so things can move a little bit faster. And so you can use that money that's going to come back to you through the truly funded Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund for your priorities. If you feel for 2 or 3 years that your roads are in good shape, your bridges are in good shape, a municipality, you here in Saugeen Shores, can use that money for your number one priority. And I'm hearing that a pool is very much a priority for this community. So we're freeing up your hands, we're getting rid of red tape, and we're being more dexterous to allow you to move towards your goals faster. Thank you.
Okay, Lisa, the question was addressed to you as well, Don Matheson.
Thank you, Mike. I know this question is near and dear to your heart as it is to mine. My question or the statement I want to know is, so the PCs are going to get rid of all the infrastructure and they're going to give you the money, but how? Are they going to do it through the efficiencies? That's cuts. I don't know how they're going to put this out there. She's making statements that they can't hold. The problem for municipalities is that the downloading that occurred during the Harris years. We are forced to look after more things than we ever had to do. It takes time. Now, to answer your question, when is it going to happen? It's going to happen as soon as I get to Queen's Park. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's it, Mike. Thank you. Okay, just want to let people know we have about 20 minutes left for questions from the audience before we get into closing comments, so keep that in mind. And our next speaker.
Pat Sanigan from Saugeen Shores. This year, the Me Too movement has reminded us that sexual harassment and assault continue. Slow down. He's going to cut me off. She's going to cut me off. Continue to happen to women daily. Central issue appears to be consent, the misunderstanding of the complexities of consent both legally and ethically. There is currently one place where young people can grapple together with these complexities. It's in the classroom through the Ontario Sexual Health Curriculum. Mr. Ford has stated that he will remove the current curriculum and return sex education to parents. I don't believe parents have ever actually been out of the teaching of sex education, but the curriculum offers, in addition, a research-based approach to healthy development and relationships. To Lisa Thompson, why is the Conservative Party removing this curriculum that would improve the understanding of consent and lead to healthier relationships? And to the other candidates, if your party is elected, what will you do to prevent violence against women?
Okay. Lisa, the first question was addressed to you, so I'll go with you.
Yeah, so thank you very much for that question. And I'm pleased to share with you that a PC government would, as a starting block, return the health curriculum back to the point prior to the Liberal government introducing the new sex ed curriculum. So that would be our starting point. And why are we doing that? I think it's a travesty when you peel away all the layers that only one parent per elementary school on average was consulted. The time and era of an urban-centric government portraying that they know best for everyone has got to come to an end. So we pledge that we will back up the truck to the curriculum just prior to the introduction to the sex ed, and we will work with teachers, we will work with social experts, and we will work with parents on how to move forward with appropriate, age-appropriate curriculum to address the very important things that you talked about. Thank you.
Okay, Lisa. Now, the other question was asked of the other three. Okay, and Jan, you will be going first.
I'm an duly elected school trustee with the board, and I can tell you and assure you that the curriculum of the new sex ed curriculum was widely consulted with families and parents and students and teachers and education. I can't believe I'm blowing that. Anyway, I am, but I believe you get it. And so I'm really concerned that they're actually going to, roll it back. And I'm going to also say, as a school trustee, that I did not receive, the whole time when there was concerns in places, I did not receive one complaint. I did. Well, but if you, okay, so I'm glad that Lisa did, but as the school trustee in my area, I would have been really appreciated, because I am the duly elected, I'm the, the representative to, responsible for that curriculum, that I would actually hear from my elected MPP, like Bill Murdoch used to do, from Gray, would let us know when there was an educational issue. So I never heard from either MPP in our region that there was a problem with the education curriculum, and nor did I hear from one complaint from a parent. Now, I know that prior to it being put in, because there was a lot of angst put around the education curriculum and a lot of misinformation, what was being taught in it, that parents expressed, concerns, and we had conversations. But since then, we have had no complaints. So I would say leave it alone, and it's working in that it's all about consent. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. Don Matheson.
Thank you for the question, Pat. Jan is the elected trustee. I'm the person who actually teaches it. I'm a physical and health education teacher. We teach sex ed all the way up from grade 9 to grade 12. We look at different aspects. We teach people respect, how to be in healthy relationships. We teach them how to deal with problems, and we teach them that treating people bad is not allowable. We cannot have that. So how do we end the violence against women? It's a terrible, terrible thing. No woman should ever have to live in fear. No person should ever have to live in fear. It happens to men too, on a smaller degree, but it does happen. I believe that we have to just keep the publication up. We have to make sure that it's out there, that people know that if something is happening to them, they have a safe place to go. Our women's houses are fantastic places. We have to make sure we have places available for people to go, people for them to talk to work things out. It takes time, but we have to keep going on it. And in fact, this coming weekend, I'll be walking in the march with the women again to end violence.
Okay, thank you, Don.
I have my red shoes.
Ron Stevens.
First of all, any man that would hit a woman is not a man, plain and simple. As far as the sex ed thing goes, if you study the research documents, and I do an awful pile of research, I'm afraid that your children are being set up here in the early grades to be groomed into this LGBTQ, XYZWX. Now, see, there's the groan, eh? There's the groan. Okay, that's good. I expected it. Now, having said that, I could care less what your sexual preference is. I could care less. But this is being groomed in the schools, okay? And that's been documented, okay? Now, I'm not, look at these idiots. Idiots! Shut up.
Okay.
The thing is here,
let's show a little respect here.
Okay,
that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, let me speak for a second. Like I said, I do not care what gender you say you are, okay? I do not care what your sexual preference is. That's your business, okay? This goes deeper than that, okay? It goes much deeper than that. And until you've gone and done your own research and researched the documents, don't start groaning. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Okay, time for our next questioner.
Glenn Sutton from Kincardine. I have questions about nuclear power, Part A and Part B. The first question is, I would like to clarify what each candidate's position is on the operation of the Pickering Nuclear Generating Station until 2024. Your own personal opinion and what your party says about that. The second question I'd like to get your opinion on is the proposed OPG low-level waste deep geological repository beneath the Bruce site that has had 3 years of hearings by a joint review panel have been passed. What is your own personal opinion as a candidate, and what is the position of your party?
Glenn, you snuck in two questions there. Which one do you really, really want answered? Number one? Okay, so the Pickering operation question. And we'll start with Jan Johnson.
Thank you very much, Glenn. And as you know, I'm a big supporter of nuclear. That's what I opened up with. And I know that the Society of, they changed the name, Professional United Engineers received a response from the NDP party. And in their response, they said they support Pickering Nuclear Generation Station remaining open if its license is renewed. And that's happening in August, and I hope that it does get renewed because I support nuclear energy.
Okay, Don Matheson.
If is a big word. If it is renewed. The leader of the NDP has gone on record stating that she will close the Pickering station by the end of August if she's elected. The NDP energy critic is totally against nuclear power. We've had downloading. I support it. The Liberal Party has brought the Bruce back through partnerships with Bruce Power. We have made that Bruce Nuclear Power one of the greatest energy sites in the world. So the Liberal Party supports it. I totally support it.
Thank you, Don. Ron Stevens.
I'm not exactly sure. What, are they planning on closing it down?
It's 2024.
Okay, well, is there no program to rebuild or renew it?
They did a study a couple of years ago.
It will be outdated, not fixable?
Correct.
Shut her down.
Its end of life is 2024.
If it isn't fixable, get rid of it. Now, I will go. I will definitely go. I am absolutely I'm pro-nuclear power. Okay, and I'll go back to the senior policy advisor I talked to. Okay, he's got no use for this renewable energy. He has all use for nuclear power. Okay, because the nuclear power is our base load. Okay, and now I guess we've moved to gas as our levelers, but we need nuclear power. Now, if it's going to cost less money to build a smaller nuke, then refurbish, and if it's not refurbishable, it's no good, right? You don't throw money at something you can't fix. Makes no sense. Build a new one. Thank you.
Thanks, Ron. Okay, Lisa.
Okay, very good. Before I answer your question, this is an energy theme, so I need to clarify a couple of things. You know, a couple of questions ago, we heard the Liberal candidate take a swing at me. I did not see him at any protest when Unifor turbine was going up. I have not seen him in the houses I have visited to experience the flash syndrome as well as the sound, the infrasound. And I would invite him to join me to go out and visit the people that are impacted day in and day out.
As a member of Saugeen Shores Council, I have been there.
Furthermore, in terms of proof in the pudding, Enbridge has recently sold their a portion of their shares in the local wind farms so that they can invest overseas or over across the pond offshore. So they are getting out of the business of land wind farms. That says a lot. When Enbridge itself is getting out of the business of wind farms in Ontario and going offshore across the pond, you know something's wrong here in Ontario. Furthermore, in terms of nuclear energy, absolutely 100%. We have to keep Pickering online to 2024. We have a big job ahead of us at both Bruce Power and Darlington in terms of the refurbishments that need to happen. And we have an NDP party that actually is absolutely against nuclear energy. As mentioned before, Peter Tabuns is absolutely dead set against nuclear energy, and a lot of NDP membership is as well. At their 2017 convention, there was a resolution come forward to the floor of their convention from both the York Simcoe Provincial Riding Association as well as the Hamilton Centre Provincial Riding Association. The first one was a resolution that wanted the next NDP government of Ontario to immediately halt the refurbishment of both Darlington and Bruce Power. Think about what that would do to the economic development in this region. And furthermore, the second resolution from Hamilton Centre read, therefore be it resolved that the NDP demand that the Wynne government commence decommissioning. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Okay, our next questioner.
Hi, my name is Curtis McEwen. I live here in Port Elgin. I'm also a professional engineer. I'm here representing the Ontario Society of Professional Engineers. So my question is...
Sorry, I didn't hear your name.
Curtis McEwen.
Curtis, thank you, Curtis.
Sorry if I speak too fast. So my question is, as representatives of political parties, you have an obligation both to your party, but also to the people in the riding that you represent. So my question is, if your party took a direction that you didn't feel was aligned with the desires of the people in this riding, or with the recommendations of professionals like engineers or nurses or doctors, would you be willing to stand up to your party, and do you feel you have the influence within your party to do so?
Okay, I believe that was addressed to everyone, so Don Matheson, you'll start it off.
That was a good question, Curtis. Probably the toughest one tonight for us up here. Would I stand up for what is right? When I joined the Liberal Party, I joined them because I believe in their platform. Now, if something was to come up that went against the best interests of my riding, I'd have to look at all the information that was there, what the effects would be, how I can deal with it. Could I go against my party? Yes, I could. Depends on the circumstance, depends on what's happening with my riding, but yes, I could.
Thank you very much. And Ron Stevens.
Yeah, I think there's a misconception here in your question.
Get the mic closer to you.
I'm sorry. It's a good question, but you know, once you elect the party, okay, make absolute certain the party does not represent you, okay? They represent the party, okay, and they do what the party wants. Now, they may give you some lip service, but in reality, the party only does what it needs to do to try to stay in power. So, in my case, would I go against the party? Oh, yeah. But our party is built of individuals, not party people. So, just remember that, okay? When you elect a party, right, you gave the parties power. They have no reason, they have no need, they have no obligation to represent anybody but the party and get elected next time if they can.
Thanks, Ron. Lisa Thompson.
Thank you. And I think it's really important that we're not naive in how our parties work. And there's a freedom amongst our elected officials to do what they can do best. And from my perspective, if there was something I felt very strongly about on behalf of the riding or on behalf of an organization that has come to speak to me and convince me that something needs to change or evolve, I would take the following steps first and foremost. I would make sure that awareness of the situation was facilitated. I would bring you to Queen's Park. I would introduce you to our policy advisors. I would introduce you to the critic. I would introduce you to our caucus so you had a chance. Many times we have caucus breakfasts where we have particular organizations come in and talk to us and educate us on particular situations that we may be needing to make a decision on down the road. That's what I absolutely positively would do on any instance in a blink of an eye. But then when it comes to caucus, when it comes to that caucus meeting and the decision is final, if it's a whipped vote, you go with the party. But another avenue would be you convince the leader to allow an open vote. And if I feel really, really strongly about that, that would be my last line of advance. I would absolutely do everything within my power to see if you would allow an open vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. And finally, Jen.
It was a really good question, and one that actually evokes, the individual's principles and thoughts about and reflective about themselves and being true to themselves. I know that at the school board that we represent all students and in all communities, but we actually advocate for a particular area, and sometimes you're maybe advocating for your area and other people might not support it. And I've really found, and I'm going to talk like Lisa has also suggested, is convincing, it's convincing or talking to others about your position and being passionate and sincere, that having others support that position, and that's absolutely one way. I also think exactly another is to advocate to to the leadership to have an open vote so that you're not feeling, pressured to vote against your own principles. You're talking about professionals, and someone did bring up Peter Tobbins. I can tell you that Peter Tobbins and I are completely in different positions in terms of nuclear, and that's okay. And that's, so I have no problems whatsoever standing up to someone like Peter Tobbins. And even when I was at convention and I heard those kind of very strange resolutions coming forward, which, just to let you know, never made it to the floor. I mean, and that's the other thing, they never made it to the floor. And so I would stand up for professionals because I'm also a professional. I'm a social worker. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, we have two more people that want to ask questions. We're running out of time, so keep the questions short, and candidates, if you can keep the answers short as well, because we can always expand after the meeting. Go ahead.
Thanks, John. My name's Kevin Larson. I'm from Saugeen Shores here. I have a question on education. It's for Lisa, Dawn, and Jan. Over 20 years ago, the funding formula was changed in this province. It dramatically underfunded the majority of the students in the province, and it resulted in a year after year battle to get adequate funding for our children in the schools. The Liberals promised to revise that funding formula. There's been repairs, but it's a funding formula with Band-Aids. I'm asking the three of you what each of your parties would do to ensure adequate funding of public education in the province. It's particularly important for us because that funding formula has never worked for rural Ontario. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kevin. And we'll start with Lisa.
Before I answer that, Kevin, I just want to share, these resolutions certainly were on the NDP website, so we have to, so with that, to answer your question, Kevin, I would say to you that it should be very apparent that the PC Party of Ontario actually has worked very hard in the closing months of the 41st Parliament to bring to everyone's attention that what is determined in Toronto doesn't always work in rural Ontario. We stand with you and you're concerned in terms of the condition of schools as well as the overall funding formula. Bill Walker, myself, our rural colleagues, we have gone to bat to say we need new funding formula that is based on the realities in rural Ontario today. And that all comes back to the fact that we currently have a government that has thumbed its nose in so many different ways at rural Ontario. They've forgotten about us. About 3 years ago, I stood up in the House and I asked the Premier, will you come forward and place a rural lens on every policy that you make coming forward? She gave great lip service, but unfortunately, it never happened.
Thank you, Lisa. And Jan Johnstone, you'll be next.
Yes, I can tell you in education circles that teachers and educators are very concerned that the Conservatives haven't put a platform together, especially around education and anything around the funding formula. So until that happens, which nobody knows if it will, I would take everything with a grain of salt there. The NDP has promised to actually redo the education funding formula, rewrite it, working with parents, teachers, experts, and of course talking to students, looking at, updoing, modernizing the education funding formula. It is very much what teachers have wanted in terms of it, and I can tell you that school boards also have, put out really concerns. Each year we ask the Liberal government, we make recommendations when are you going to completely review the funding formula. And we're also very much in that review going to have a moratorium on school closures so that no schools are closing while we go through this huge review in the province. And we're also going to take into account the factors that affect rural schools such as school transportation. Because one size doesn't fit all, when we all know, like musical councils here, rural people know that we often feel that, policy is made that fits in downtown Toronto and it doesn't work in a rural environment. Thank you.
Thanks, Jan. Don Matheson.
This is a question near and dear to my heart, Kevin, and thank you for that. Jan, I'm glad you're going to continue on with the Liberal policy of the school closure moratorium. That's great. The big thing is, however, you mentioned we want to look at transportation. You did vote to continue transportation for a program that was one of the first high school major programs in the province, and then when the school year started, that transportation funding was pulled from that, effectively killing that program. Now, I hope the PCs are also very looking forward to fixing this funding program because, well, where did this all start? Where did the downloading start? It started back in the Harris era. The funding formula does have to be changed. I understand the rural funding formula as well as anybody because I'm in the trenches. The way it's going to be improved is to have a new voice, a stronger voice, a voice that is in the trenches, that is in the classroom in Queen's Park. So once I get to Queen's Park, that is one of the very first things that I want to look at, the rural funding formula, because rural is relevant and we have to look after ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. We have one more question from the floor, and then we'll have closing arguments. Go ahead.
My name's David Wilson. I'm from Kincardine. I would like to know what you personally embrace. Do you personally embrace diversity and multiculturalism?
Okay, and this is for everyone? Okay, I believe we start with you, Don.
Do I believe in diversity and multiculturalism? I sure do. As a teacher, you get to see everything, and I want my students to understand diversity and culturalism. We're a multicultural country. I can say no more about that. Diversity, differences have to be accepted.
Ron Stevens.
Diversity and inclusion.
Again, Ron, I'll ask you to get closer to the mic.
Again. Diversity and inclusion, you have to go do a little research on that as well. None of these programs come from the province. They're all coming from outside. Don't call me a racist or a bigot. Thank you very much. We're going to have a problem here shortly. We have the NDP here who want to turn Ontario into a sanctuary province. Doug Ford, Doug and his brother Rob signed agreement with the City of Toronto to make that a sanctuary city. This is opening the doors to illegals. I have no problem with immigration, but our doors are being thrown open. Now, the federal government has partnered with the UN Refugee Agency and George Soros' Open Societies. And that is because of agreements that Canada has signed with the United Nations. So effectively, our doors, our borders at this moment are wide open. And these parties are going to turn your province into a sanctuary city. So when these migrants show up in your town, you're on the hook for the expenses. So rural Ontario better wake up and wake up quick. And no, I'm not a racist. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ron. And Lisa Thompson.
We're stronger because of embracing multiculturalism and diversity. The youngest in my family started her high school teaching career. She's a mathematics, chemistry, biology teacher, and she started her teaching career with a private Canadian school in China. My sister and her family are currently at an international baccalaureate in Kuwait, and it's really cool to live vicariously through them and understand and accept different ways of living. So that's one of my benchmarks when I say we're richer because of embracing multiculturalism. And I just want to end by saying it was really poignant the other week when I attended the Multicultural Festival in Kincardine. There were 30 different countries celebrated. And they're calling Kincardine an area home. And they're contributing to our communities. And they're making our whole lifestyle in this area so much richer because not only are they bringing their great food and their great costumes and dances and things like that, but they're making us more tolerant as they introduce their heritage and their pride for home country. And so there is no question we have to continue embracing diversity and multiculturalism.
Thank you, Lisa. Jan Johnstone.
Of course.
course, I support diversity. I wouldn't be the vice chair of the Blue Water District School Board if I didn't. And I actually represent one of the most multicultural areas in the school board. Like Port Elgin, Kincardine is very multicultural. We have people, pardon? Thank you, Saugeen Shores. Because we have many people that come to work at Bruce Power, and it's very attractive to people from all sorts of different cultures. Having said that, I think that it's to recognize that everybody who comes to work there is also a Canadian, and that that we shouldn't be focusing on necessarily on customs, cuisine, and cultures, and the fact that we would want to look at that we all can learn from one another. So I support diversity.
Thank you, Jen. Well, we've covered a lot of territory here, and it's time for closing remarks. Each candidate has 2 minutes to state their case, and of course the red card rule will apply as well. And we're doing it in reverse alphabetical order. So that means we will start with Progressive Conservative candidate Lisa Thompson.
Gary, bring it back a little. We're right in front of them. Perfect.
That counts as some of your time, Lisa. I'm sorry.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here this evening. And I sincerely thank the chambers from both Saugeen Shores and Kincardine. I really like this format. I like the ebb and flow and the interaction with the audience. And thank you for your participation as well. Because when we have this type of conversation, we all can learn from it. And I want to share with you that it's only 15 days, ladies and gentlemen, 15 days until the election. But I suggest to you, and I'm confident in saying, the message is now clear and it's unmistakable. At the doorstep, on the phones, at events, in emails, and on social media, I'm hearing from across the province that people are ready for change. It's definitely not more. I'll rephrase that. It's definitely not time for more of the same. People want change in terms of strong leadership, and they want change to ensure that the debt and deficit are properly addressed. You know, a wise person once said, when times are good, you should be paying down a little bit on the debt. But over the last 15 years, it's doubled, and that is not healthy. It's not healthy for us, our children, or our grandchildren. Ladies and gentlemen, the last 15 years of mismanagement has left this province choking in debt. And the NDP tell us, if they have their way, they will tax more and spend more. And quite frankly, we can't afford that. Enough is enough. So the facts are clear. You deserve better. Our kids deserve better. I would love for Deidre to come home. And our grandchildren deserve better. On June 7th, I ask for your vote. It will be a vote for change. It will be a vote for a better, stronger Ontario. And a vote for Lisa Thompson will be a vote for growth. And it will be a plan that everyone can believe in. Ladies and gentlemen, in exchange for that, I promise you, I will continue to work very hard every day because Huron-Bruce matters. Thank you for being here this evening.
Thank you, Lisa Thompson. From the Libertarian Party, Ron Stevens.
Okay, appreciate it. I want to really thank this crowd, and I really want to thank the people that put this on. This is by far, it was when I ran 11 years ago, it was the best forum in the whole election. The questions aren't vetted like they are in everywhere else we go. This was excellent. As far as the conservative package goes, I just, Jesus. Give this some thought. Now, I did go to a meeting. I got a couple minutes here. I did go to a meeting, I don't know, 6-7 years ago after they flagged our town with Islam as the religion of peace. And I went to a meeting that was put on in Kincardine at the library. I was the only one that showed up, which was fine because I had 2 hours to talk to these people. And what they are convinced of is that Islam will be the religion and Sharia will be the law. And this is what's coming down the pipe at you with this immigration nonsense. If you go look at the universal human rights, which everybody's heard of, there are 2 other human rights. One is the indigenous rights and one is the Islamic rights. And you do a little research, you'll find the papers now that has been decided that the human rights will be based on Islamic rights because it is not a separation of church and state. And they claim it to be the best fit. So I want you people to think real hard in this election, okay? There's a lot of stuff going to come down the pipe at you. And it's a lot more important than the swimming pool. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron Stevens, Libertarian. Our Liberal candidate, Don Matheson.
Before I begin, I also would like to thank everybody for being here tonight. It's important to see democracy at its finest when people are involved. A special thank you goes out to the Saugeen Shores and Kincardine Chambers of Commerce, and of course to our Canadian Federation of University Women. You ladies do a lot of work. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Thank you. In just under 2 weeks, you'll have to decide which political platform is best for Huron Bruce and for the province. Beware of political parties that promise to lower gas taxes, to lower taxes, energy costs. That would create higher deficits and would also require cuts to social programs and local infrastructure projects. We've been there before in the Mike Harris and the Bears, and it was devastating for the province and for Huron Bruce. I know that Bruce Power is the most important driver for the economy in this part of Bruce County. In fact, the Bruce has a major economic impact across Huron Bruce. Small businesses, developers, restaurants, local contractors, healthcare workers, and most employees in the education sector rely on Bruce Power for their livelihood. Completing the full refurbishment project put in place by the Liberal government is essential to our long-term prosperity. Think of the potential benefits from 22,000 jobs this project will create. I also know that the PCs are not committed to the project, maybe 20 more years according to the leader. What does that mean? Furthermore, the NDP will not automatically renew the contracts with private electricity producers such as Bruce Power. If imported electricity from Manitoba and Quebec will reduce electricity bills for consumers, so be it. The NDP are willing to export your jobs to other provinces. The role of government is to look after the people, all people. Everyone deserves to be cared for. A government must have a plan. We have a plan, one that builds on our successful record. We believe in care before cuts. I am no different than any other voter in this province. Your dreams are my dreams. Your goals are my goals, and your fears are my fears. If you're concerned about the future of our community along the lakeshore if Bruce Power is not completely rebuilt, vote for Don Matheson. Your future and your children's future depend on the future of Bruce Power. We need another 45 to 50 years at the Bruce. On June 7th, vote for care, not cuts. Vote for the Bruce. Vote for Don Matheson. Rule is relevant. Thank you.
Thank you, Don Matheson, Liberal candidate. Now NDP candidate Jan Johnstone.
I'd like to thank, of course, Saugeen Shores Chamber, Kincardine Chamber, and the University Women's for putting on this debate. I'd also like to thank the moderator, John, and of course the media and timekeepers who all came out tonight, and of course the audience and the people who are from Huron Bruce coming to hear the things that we have to say. It's been nearly 2 decades from the moment the Conservatives tried to privatize Hydro One to the Liberals finishing the sell-off. During those years, we've seen scandals over the gas plants, Orange Air Ambulance, cash for access to ministers, the Sudbury by-election, and PC membership lists, nominations and finances, and now the 407 data theft and tainted candidates. Ontarians and people of Huron-Bruce deserve so much better. They deserve politicians and leaders who will behave with integrity and transparency. It's time for something completely different. Andrea Horwath and the NDP will bring change for the better. You don't have to choose between bad and worse. It's time for something completely different. It's time for hope and for change for the better. I hope I can count on your support on June 7th to bring change for the people of Huron-Bruce, to be an advocate and a complete advocate for Bruce Energy, and I'm honored and humbled. Thank you for your support.
Thank you, Jen. Well, as we end this meeting, it's up to you now. You've heard about the candidates, their parties, their platforms, and you make the decision on June 7th. Now, if you care to take part in the advance polls, they're being held in 8